Let's talk tag teams here. And when I mean tag teams, you should know by now I'm a WWF guy. WWF, WWE. Tag teams, I love them. I love tag team wrestling. And supposedly in the late 80s, mid 80s, or when Vince Jr. took over, he wasn't big on tag teams. But tag teams are what drew. The Hart Foundation, and I mentioned it before, the Hart Foundation, the British Bulldogs, Killer Bees, the Rougeaus. Those guys, then the Rockers came. I used to love that. The Islanders. I think Tonga Kid is what they called him. He was from the Fatu family, the Anoa Aya family, Fatu. He was from that family. Him and Haku, the Islanders. And they mixed it up with the British Bulldogs. And I was even watching, I'd switch over sometimes in the Road Warriors. Everyone knew the Road Warriors and the Steiners and the Harlem Heat and the Nasty Boys from WCW. But tag teams were big. But then, after the Hart Foundation, and I said this before, when Shawn Michaels kicked Marty Jannetty through that glass window, things just changed. And the tag team division just kind of went south because then you had Men on a Mission and the Bushwhackers and the Godwins and the Body Donnas. And these guys weren't stars. They were just jobbers thrown together. The Godwins and they did the Body Donnas skip and zip. Chris Candido and, those guys weren't stars. Midian came from the Godwins, ended up being in the ministry, corporate ministry and the ministry. Men on a Mission, Viscera. You see those tag teams, they just had B- at best. But I mean tag teams like the Hart Foundation. And then you get Bret Hart, who goes out on his own. But they started as a tag team. The British Bulldogs started as a tag team. And then you get stars that come from that. The Dudley Boys are always going to be connected as the Dudley Boys. Some guys can break off and venture off and they can become stars. Some guys are only good at tag team. Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels. Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil. The Anvil couldn't do anything by himself. They even tried to put him with Owen Hart. He still couldn't do anything. Owen Hart, if he'd have still been there, he'd have been a star. No doubt he would have had the belt on him. But he was kind of stuck in that mid-card and tag team as well. The Steiners, same thing. Scotty took off when he went to the NWO. Harlem Heat, same thing. Some guys like the Road Warriors and the Nasty Boys are always going to be linked to tag teams. Then you get the Attitude Era comes and you got the Hardys and Edge and Christian, who were all four of those guys were stars in their own right when they went singles competition, but they were connected as a tag team. You knew them as a tag team. Even though Edge and Christian, they came in as singles, when they paired them together, those guys had charisma. They had mic skills. They could work. I didn't like later on when they started just throwing guys together. Diesel and Shawn Michaels are tag teams. Rock and Sock Connection. Those aren't really tag teams. I didn't even like it when they put Ted DiBiase and Mike Rotundo together because these guys are already over. When you're already over and you throw a tag team together, like I said, Austin and Taker were tag team. These guys were already over. Kane and Daniel Bryan are tag team champions. Even they called them Team Hell No. They're not a tag team. Those guys were already over. Those guys are former world champions. How could you make them tag teams? Keep the tag. I always like when you keep the tag teams as tag team in their own division. And just throwing guys together because they're over, it doesn't work. If you get guys that just come in as mid-cards or they're just trying to find their niche in the business and you throw them together and they're successful as a tag team, as the Hart Foundation was, as the British Bulldogs was, as the Islanders were, Killer Bees, the Rougeau brothers, all these guys. Greg Valentine and who was he with? Brutus Beefcake. Valentine was already over in the territories. So it worked for them. Put him with Jimmy V, and then you bring him in, and then at WWF, no one knew when Vince Jr. put these guys together that they were singles, that Greg Valentine was successful as a singles in the territories. So all we knew was the Dream Team and Johnny V. So it worked. But you can't just throw guys together. Big Show and Miz, and they called him Show Miz. Or Jericho and Big Show, and they called him a Jarrett Show. Come on, you're just kind of reaching. And then in the territories, you had the Four Horsemen. Of course, you had Arn and Ole Anderson were tag teams, and then they'd go back and forth. Ric Flair would be with Arn Anderson, and then they come to the WWE and they call themselves the Brainbusters. That just didn't work. Ron Simmons and Butch Reed is Doom. We already knew. We knew who those guys were. But if I had to pick my top 5 all time, any kind of order, I don't know. We go back and forth, but I'd say the British Bulldogs, because those guys were short and they could work. They had power, and just because they were little guys and they were over. And I'd say the Hart Foundation, because Brett could sell, and then the Anvil had that power. Then I'd go with Edge and Christian, because they weren't the biggest guys, but they knew, like I said before, they had charisma. They knew how to talk. They could work, and they were they were athletic. And then I'd say the Road Warriors, because of their power, and just I was never a big who's these guys? I was never a big Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express. I really weren't big fans of them. The Fabulous Freebirds, that was kind of the NWA era. But also I throw the Harlem Heat in there. Hart Foundation, British Bulldogs, Edge and Christian, Road Warriors, and Harlem Heat. Those would be my top 5. Wasn't big. Just that one era. I talk about that era all the time with the Bushwhackers and the Godwins and the Body Donnas. That just couldn't do it. But anyway, the New Age Outlaws worked. I have to give it to them. The New Age Outlaws. The Smoking Guns, Bart and Billy Gunn, too cartoony, but Billy got over. Hooked him up with Armstrong. There you go. New Age Outlaws. That worked. And modern day Usos. New Day, not a big fan of. Anyway, let me know. Leave me a comment. Your favorite tag team, any era. Or give me a call, 1-800-444-H2OS. It's the Waters Rant.